Hey guys, we are live with the Shooter's Mindset episode 304, talking about applied ballistics. We've got Greg, our co host, here tonight.
Hey everyone.
Anthony he might hop on here. I'm not sure if he's going to hop on or not, but he couldn't get home in time. He's working, training lots of people. So he may pop in later and he might not. We'll see. But the guests of the hour, that the reason everybody's here to watch the show, we have Chris Winky, the Applied Ballistics Training Division Manager, and Mitch Fitzpatrick, the Applied Ballistics Engineer. I did not get tongue twisted on that. You proud? Anyway, let's start with you, Mitch. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the shooting industry and how you ended up working for Applied Ballistics.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Mitch Fitzpatrick. I'm a mechanical engineer at Applied Ballistics. I got started shooting actually when I was in high school. I kind of just stumbled across F-class competition shooting. F-class shooting, a lot of people are probably familiar with that. If you're not, it's considered belly bench rest. A lot of people call it. So it's just kind of flat, square range, 1,000-yard shooting. Typically, there's mid-range too. But and I wanted to start doing that, but I didn't really have the money to buy the equipment I needed to when I was in high school. So I was actually able to get access to some mills and lathes and stuff, and I started kind of putting together my own rifles with the help of my dad and my uncles, and started shooting and started doing really well. And being that I was living from here in Michigan, ran into Brian at some of the matches, Brian Litz, and that's how I kind of got connected with him when I was in high school, and started interning with Applied Ballistics and just shooting F-class with a lot of the guys here in Michigan. Started traveling around doing that, and one thing led to another. Tried out for the U.S. team for the World Championships in 2017, and got on that, shot with those guys. So that was a good experience. And then late 2015, Brian and I decided we wanted to kind of hop into the ELR game. So we kind of switched gears and started building ELR guns while we were still preparing for the F-class Worlds. And so we started shooting. 2016 was the first year we started shooting ELR, and I won the King of 2 Miles in 2016. I've been shooting and won quite a few ELR matches since then. And after 2017, I kind of stopped shooting F-class and have been continuing on with the ELR. Hopefully I can get involved in a little bit more PRS and practical type stuff here going forward. Just been busy graduating college and getting started working full time at AB, so I haven't shifted gears to anything new. But that's kind of the short version of the story.
Sweet. That must be one heck of an internship to get to go intern with Applied Ballistics and Brian Litz. Good Lord,
Yeah.
in high school, that's
Yeah, I've been working with them since I was in high school. I just graduated college. It's been 6 or 7 years I've been working with them now, and it's just one of those freak things. When I kind of hopped into the F-class shooting at the time, I hopped in about as hard as I could, and Brian recognized that and gave me an opportunity. So it obviously it's worked out pretty well.
that's awesome. So Chris, how about you? How'd you get involved in the shooting industry and eventually working for Applied Ballistics as well?
Yeah, so I guess my story regarding my entry into the shooting industry is somewhat different to Mitch's. I grew up, shooting, starting with air rifle 22 as a real young lad, and then ended up joining the military when I was about 18 and had a pretty extensive career in the Australian military for a bunch of years. Eventually streamed into the sniper community and spent a lot of years behind bolt guns and gas guns in the sniper community there. And then eventually I went contracting for the Australian government for a few years, and then come back to the Australian sniper community again for another year or so. And so I was never really directly involved with the shooting industry as such, except for, I still dabbled in some long range hunting and things like that aside from work. But my entry into the firearms industry started when I knew that I was coming to a close on my military contract. And I saw that Applied Ballistics had recently put a Facebook post out looking for engineers. And so I took my CV and I sent my CV to Brian, and I explained, look, hey, Brian, I'm no engineer, but maybe you'll find a use for the skill sets I have available. And sure enough, he got back in contact with me, and we continued to bounce emails back and forth. I went through an interview process, an initial phone call, and then linked up with Brian in late 2018, and commenced work after moving over here. So yeah.
That's awesome. Y'all both had interesting paths to get there.
Mhm.
Kind of unconventional paths, different ways. So can you tell us a little bit about the history of Applied Ballistics and how it got to where it is today?
Mitch, I feel like you're a good one for this because you've basically been there since the inception, right? Like since the dawn of time as it was born. So I feel like you should take this.
Yeah, not quite that early, but pretty close. We're kind of joking about it. I think Doc is the only one that's still working there, other than Brian, obviously, that was working there when I started. So we've got tons of people have been hired on since I started, which is ironic because I just started full time. But yeah, anyway, so I think it was about 2009 when Brian was kind of leaving his previous career working for the Air Force, and he was wanting to get into the shooting industry. He was a competitive shooter growing up, kind of similar to how I started. Only he started like in Palma shooting, and actually he originally started doing bench rest. But anyway, and so he was trying to get a job with one of the bullet manufacturers, and obviously he became the ballistician for Burger Bullets. So that's kind of how that went. But on top of that, he recognized the need for accurate BC data on all of the long-range bullets that were available for long-range shooters. And so on his own, independently, he started testing different chronographs. He got the chronographs that kind of worked the best, and he was going to public ranges and shooting through the chronographs to get BC data, and that was kind of the inception of Applied Ballistics. And not only that, but then he also recognized a kind of a gap in the knowledge that a lot of people had about long-range shooting, the science that goes into it. So he also started writing the Applied Ballistics books that most people are familiar with, and AB is kind of known for. So that's kind of how it got started. And then as that progressed, a few more people got involved, and that's when the software side of things started to take off because Brian and some of the others recognized a need or an opportunity for better ballistics software for shooters to kind of take advantage of the science that he was writing about and the BCs that he was measuring and producing. And that really has been, that kind of encompasses what the evolution of AB has been really in the last 10, 11 years. Just in the last couple of years, we've kind of tried some other things. We tried the weapons division thing for a while, producing weapons because, that was something that I had kind of originally gotten into. And, we did that for a little while. There's a lot of people out there doing that. It wasn't a super good fit for our organization and the way we operate. So we kind of decided to not keep doing that. And then obviously we've started the training division. That's what Chris does. And that was started as kind of as we recognized a kind of a gap in a lot of the products that we're putting, I shouldn't say that we're putting out, a lot of the products that are coming out with the software that we produce that gets integrated into those products, kind of the training and the knowledge base to use those products, as well as a demand from military and everything else that goes along with how AB has grown. So that's kind of the the big picture of how AB's kind of evolved. Specifically, the labs where we do a lot of this testing, the BC testing. We do all sorts of different shooting experiments. We test. Everything from how big of an impact does annealing have on your groups or your velocity spreads to testing different powders. Just pretty much any shooting precision velocity tests you can imagine, we shoot there.
That's awesome.
I think I might be able to bring this full circle too, actually, because concurrently while AB is developing and growing as a company, I was back in Australia, and I remember we started dabbling with ballistic solvers quite early on as they the inception of these ballistic solvers started coming out on PDAs and things like that. And I remember quite vividly when the Kestrel 4500 with AB came out, and that was pretty much a game changer overnight for us on the ground as well in terms of trajectory prediction and what that meant for a sniping capability. And so that was what made me aware of applied ballistics to begin with, alongside Brian's books, and ultimately how I got linked up with AB in the long run. But it's just interesting to note the developments and how far everything's come in the last few years. And now we have a lot of devices integrated with AB software and what that means for trajectory prediction and what that means for allowing shooters to get on target, with first round hits.
Yeah, it's really an amazing accomplishment in the shooting world. There's a lot of guys at work, older guys that were, 40, 50 years ago trying to do some of the stuff that we do today. And, I talk, I'm like, yeah, this stage at the match is really fun. We shot, 600 yards, 800 yards, 1200 yards and the back and forth. And they're like, how do you hit it the first time? I'm like, oh, I put the distance in my phone and then I dial the little knobby do to what it says.
Yep.
I remember when when we first started messing around with solvers, and it was all G1 BCs with velocity bands, and there was no really consistent data available or anything like that. And through necessity and through the recognition of innovation, a need for innovation, we've kind of developed and grown into what's now possible for your run-of-the-mill long-range shooter. So
I'll say it's like voodoo. It's like magic. Like it's so funny. I just put it in and it is always right. I have yet to, I know people sometimes are tinker with it. I have yet to have to adjust anything. My dope is always, now wind is a different story. Yeah. That's on me, but elevation is always right.
Yeah, I always love those. Every once in a while, somebody will be like, the wind was 5 miles an hour, but the Kestrel was 0.2 of a mil off. And I'm like, yeah, was the wind really 5 miles an hour? All right.
I know for 100% certainty for all 1,200 yards, the wind was exactly 5 miles an hour.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, wind's always a big question, but yeah, I'm the same way. The Kestrel in our software has some functionality for drop scale factor and truing, and those are very valuable parts of the software that are used in some applications. But just like you were saying, for me personally and all the shooting I do, I'd have never had to use them either.
Yeah, I very much agree as well, and that's really good to hear, Jennifer, because that's somewhat what I preach to shooters, regardless of whether it's military, law enforcement, or civilian. Your elevation should line up regardless. It should just come down to a solid wind call for average wind and wind speed, wind direction downrange. That should be realistically what you need to do as the shooter, and that's it. The device should be doing everything else for you. And I kind of relate this back to just a calculator on steroids, right? Like if 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, you've got to ask questions. And really what Solver is doing in the background is it's doing the math for you. It's, doing the science, it's running the equations of motion for you. And if, that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, something's not quite right. You just need to figure out what that is.
Yep. And so we had somebody ask the question, why should we not true our BC to match our rifle? Which is kind of a couple questions in one that I guess we should kind of break down a little bit.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is most rifles are going to have a pretty consistent BC for a given projectile. That might have been awkward phrasing. What I mean is, if you're shooting a specific bullet, like the BC that we have in our library is probably going to be very close for your rifle. Some rifles do have differences. We do see that, and we'll get into that a little bit when we start talking about PDMs and stuff we do at the mobile lab. But adjusting the BC should be one of the very last things you do, because if it is different, it's only going to be different a little bit. And so you kind of get into the nuance of like, how much error are you really trying to true out here? But a good rule of thumb is like a truing or adjusting anything on the drag should be like way down your list of things. I mean, obviously your first thing you should do is always just confirm your muzzle velocity. Make sure that, from when you chronographed a week ago to, now 50 shots later, you think your dope's off, but your velocity could very well be different. So you need to, check your muzzle velocities, because we see that all the time with velocity migration, depending on what cartridge, powder, everything you're shooting. Some things are sensitive to that. Any other inputs, especially if you're making a new profile, do you have your scope height correct? All that other stuff.
I know somebody that messed that up.
Yeah, exactly. And then like, if you really honestly believe you've kind of gone through everything and you think all your inputs are correct, but you still got a little bit of error, you're running a chronograph while you're shooting, so your velocity input's exactly correct. If anything, on the user level, you should true your velocity a little bit to get things to line up. Because kind of like what Chris was just going into, if all of your inputs are correct, and I mean truly correct, it's amazing how that seems simple, but myself, Chris, Brian, we mess that stuff up sometimes. Like, there's a lot of inputs and there's a lot of information to track, and it's a really common thing to mess up. But once you've got all your inputs correct and your velocity is correct, 99% of the time your elevation is going to line up. In the few cases that it doesn't, at the user level, best thing you can do is just, if it's like into transonic, is run a DSF. If it's inside of that, just true your velocity a little bit. Beyond that, like I said, we'll get into this in a little bit probably, but any changes with drag stuff, I would do that with a PDM. I would come see us at an event. We'll shoot your gun over the radar, get a PDM set up so you have a profile with your exact drag, and that is the true, quote unquote, true drag for your rifle measured.
That's awesome. I'm hopefully coming to Wisconsin, and I got to see if I can get enough ammo in there to do that.
We only need 10 or 12 shots to get really good data for you.
I have an idea. What if you take my rifle and rifle case with you, and you can put some ammo in my case, and maybe while you're there, so you have a backup gun.
That's fine. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So we've kind of touched on bits and pieces of it, but at the Applied Ballistics Lab, what's like the list of things that you do? What all do you guys do there at the lab?
So I mean, to summarize it, I would say we do, every kind of, when you're at the loading bench and you're like, oh man, I should test this to see how it affects my velocities and consistency. Like, all the little ideas and type of stuff you come up with when you're reloading or stuff you want to test in your rifle, that's what we do at the lab. We've got all sorts of high-end loading equipment. We've got annealers and, all the new and high-end powder measuring devices, priming tools. We've tested stuff from trying to like weight sort primers to how does annealing affect your SDs. I mean, all the way up to, you know, some higher level stuff for component manufacturers. So again, all that little kind of stuff that you wonder when you're at the loading bench trying to find the, like, what's the next little thing to give you an edge. That's exactly what we're doing at the lab, essentially, to put it, to kind of summarize it. But a lot of what we do is BC testing there when we're not doing other, military government contract stuff, manufacturer contract stuff. And the BC testing, honestly, it's pretty straightforward. We're shooting over Doppler radar. We get the bullets in. We get, we don't, for the BC testing that goes into our library, we don't get bullets direct from the manufacturer, even from Berger or anyone. What we do is we actually go and buy the bullets from like Midway or Powder Valley or Brownells, Sinclair. And the reason for that is we never want to run the risk of getting like a prototype run of bullets or something like that. So we just always go and buy the same bullets everybody else is buying. And that's what we load up and we test to put into the library.
I think it's important
that's
too.
kind of an overview.
I think it's important too to outline when Mitch is talking about BC testing. That's not just testing new bullets. That's going back and reconfirming the average BC for a lot of current bullets that are already existing in the bullet library. And that's a continuous, ongoing task, in the sense that the guys at the lab will go back and re-verify the average, G7 and G1 BCs and average custom drag models for those bullets periodically as well, lot to lot. So, that should give shooters a lot of confidence that their data that they're pulling from the bullet library wasn't captured or tested years ago. It's most likely been updated quite recently.
That's and that leads into another thing that's kind of good to point out, especially kind of relating it back to the PDMs and stuff we're doing now. It's amazing how relatively dynamic BCs can be. So historically, a bullet comes out, they print a BC on the box, and that's the BC. But what we found is over time, different lots of bullets from the same manufacturer, same model. The BC varies. It kind of changes over time as the dyes that form the bullets change, as jacket material changes, as core material changes. It just changes over time. Like, there's small dimensional changes, and that manifests itself in small BC changes. So that's kind of what Chris was getting at there with updating the library and trying to retest existing bullets, because a bullet that was tested 10 years ago, the BC is most likely going to be a little bit different today than it was 10 years ago. So that's why we work to try to keep everything as updated as we can. Now we've got, I believe we've got over 1,000 bullets now in our library. So that's a big undertaking to kind of update and manage and keep working with that. But that's what we're trying to do, because like you said, as we've been in this game long enough now, and we've tested enough things that we kind of see how dynamic it is. And that's another big reason why we're going to the PDMs now, because guys like to buy, they like to buy a few thousand bullets from one lot. Well, if you come to a match and get a PDM, you have the exact BC, or better yet, PDM, CDM. We can get into that. For that lot of bullets out of your rifle, through your suppressor, the whole 9 yards. And that kind of can help guys avoid some of these nuance changes in BCs. That is kind of the reality of manufacturing.
That's pretty sweet. So I think we're going to go and hit some live
was about to
questions real
say,
quick.
I have to
Okay.
hit the lives mainly
Yeah.
so that P Winky will quit tagging me. But Prentice, we are going to have to renegotiate this. See, you're not giving me any quarters for your shout outs, and you'll give Gina quarters. So I might not give you any more shout outs until I can renegotiate this deal with you. But I will shout out your wife, Ashley. Hey, Ashley. So I had to get that out. So Prentice, I saw your 58 comments where you tagged me. It's okay. You can stop. But let's see. Somebody had a good question or a good comment on here. Miles, when we were talking about the elevation not lining up, said that zero offset and mirage effects are far more ignored and contributory to dope disparities than BC variants, in my opinion. I think he's right there. I think a lot of times people messing up on input in their Kestra. I'll admit that I got to Wyoming and had changed something in my Kestrel accidentally. And I don't know how I managed to do it because I had it all in there, right? But anyway, for 6GT, and changed was it the diameter? No, maybe it was the BC that accidentally got changed. Anyway, my dope was way off. And I was like, why is my dope off? When I was like checking out to 600 and I'm like going back through, I was like, I got to go look at the BC, that bullet again. And yeah, it was that. It's amazing how just having things entered wrong, human error can make a huge issue.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of like what I was saying earlier. The variations in BC for the vast majority of shooters, that should be way down on the list of things that should cause you an issue.
Definitely.
And honestly, the main reason we've found it and we've been looking at it so much is primarily because of all the ELR shooting we do. It becomes a lot bigger question when you're talking about trying to shoot a group at 2 miles than it does when you're trying to hit targets at 600 or 1,000 yards. Because, I mean, a small BC change doesn't affect your drop very much at 600 or 1,000 yards, but it can have mils of difference, at 2 miles and stuff like that. So we've learned a lot, and we've been paying a lot closer attention to a lot of this stuff because of the demands and what's required to try to hit stuff at these stupid distances, which is why we love ELR so much and why we spend so much time on it, because those little things, they matter a lot more. And so the science geek in us gets a little excited with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Jen says doing accurate temperature variance input seems to be a key to accurate output.
For like I'm assuming he's talking about the muzzle velocity temp table.
I think that temperature variance. So I think just the environmentals being off.
Yeah. So those are both important because so Doc, our support guy, he'll be the first to tell you that so many people misuse that powder temp table. And that's something Chris could probably talk to a little bit more about. Because if it's not done right, it can actually cause a lot of error. So if it's not done perfectly right, it's better to have not been done at all. But specifically to just variances in temperature, like specifically for the Kestrel, it has the lock environmental features. I've been around a lot of guys who they don't like religiously use that lock environmental feature. Well, if you get you stand up and you measure your atmospherics and you've got your temperature and humidity and everything, and then you say you're going to shoot prone and you lay down to shoot and you set your Kestrel down on your shooting mat, and you get down behind the gun, and then 30 seconds goes by or whatever, and you look at your Kestrel to put your dope on. Well, now it thinks it's 20 degrees hotter because it's it's in the sun on your shooting mat, and so now your data's off from what it should have been. You should have locked your environmental data in when you were standing up, spinning the Kestrel or in the wind, and that's big. I mean, that's if you're not paying attention to that, now you think your dope's off, but in reality, your atmospherics were just way off because it was measuring off your shooting mat in the sun.
I actually didn't know that at first. Got a Kestrel and didn't know a whole lot. Anyway, and Sean Murphy, we were at Arena in Blakely, Georgia, where it's like kind of like almost in line with hill. how hot it is.
Yeah.
And we are on the it's a 3-story tower, and I'm all the way up on the 3rd story, and I'm like laying there, and I had my things sitting there, my Kestrel was sitting there in the heat, and I'm like, this is not right. It's just, it's a little bit off. And he looked and he's like, you need to lock your environmentals after you get up and twirl it and get it in the air where it's getting the actual air temperature and not soaking up the sun. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's mind blown. So
it's all those little things. I mean, in reality, what we're trying to do with long range shooting, there's a ton that goes into it that we really try to simplify, but there's a lot of nuances that you can kind of, either you just don't know about when you're getting started, or it's easy to forget about. So
you've got some amount of forgiveness depending on how much error you have input or captured, in the supersonic flight regime. But especially when you hit trans and sub, in any kind of ELR capacity, regardless of if that's us talking about the ELR discipline as it exists now, or whether you're just taking your, old 308 Winchester out to 12 or 1400 meters, that's still ELR. Once you reach that transonic flight regime, you're going to suffer a lot more, and there'll be a lot less forgiveness in error margins in terms of the temperature environmental inputs that you've captured. I think it's one other thing I'd like to note too, actually. Mitch, you talked earlier about the MV temp table and using that as a tool basically to have the device auto update your muzzle velocity. It's important to note that the device itself is working off of the ambient temperature. And so if your ammunition has been stored at a different ambient temperature to the ambient temperature that you're swinging your Kestrel around outside, of course your muzzle velocity is going to be off, because the Kestrel is using that ambient temperature rather than, it doesn't have an input, or you haven't told it what the ambient temperature of your ammunition powder is. And that's particularly relevant to guys that are storing ammunition in vehicles, where either the vehicle might be hot or it might be slightly warm, just comfortable in the vehicle, and then they hop out of the vehicle and it's the middle of winter, and it might be 20 degrees. And so that's something that needs to be noted as well, and it goes in line with what we were talking about with input errors earlier on tonight. If there's some kind of discrepancy or amount of error margin in the firing solution, again, you just have to go through and troubleshoot what that could possibly be caused by.
Yep, that's a lot of knowledge there. We do have a couple of birthdays of our viewers this week and our friends. Chad Heckler's birthday was yesterday, and Swanee's birthday is today. So I just want to say happy birthday to them.
Oh, both Michigan guys too.
Yeah, and Michigan guys. And then also Zachary wants to know if you guys could talk a little bit more about the twirling of the Kestrel, how long to do it, how often to do it, and any other tips around that. And then after that, we're going to announce a giveaway.
Okay.
Do you want me to take this, Mitch, or you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so generally it's, running the Kestrel, you can just swing it around. There's no method or madness to it. Just give it a good, five odd seconds or whatever, swing it around through the air. And what you're trying to achieve is get some ambient airflow through the thermistor and the sensors that are located, obviously, the ones that you see in front of you in the middle of the Kestrel above the screen, but there's also some sensors on the rear of the Kestrel as well, which is why, if you were to leave your Kestrel on live and leave it in your pocket, you're going to get an incorrect reading. Or if you were to leave that Kestrel in your hand, that warmth, that body warmth is going to start to skew your readings as well. So definitely don't overthink it though. Just swing that bad boy around.
Yeah. Yep.
How'd you miss that target? I twirled it 8 times, not 7.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, there's no there's no real science to it, because like you said, the whole point is the ambient, or to get the airflow over it, so it's reading the actual ambient conditions. And I mean, by the time it's gone around second, third, fourth, fifth time, it's probably good. The one thing I will say, again, for just the best accuracy is when I'm swinging that thing around, the last time I swing it around, I'm planning to like catch it as soon as it's coming down, and I like catch it and I lock the environmentals right then, because if you watch it, yeah, it starts changing again fast, because I mean, you want to lock it into as close as it's spinning around as possible. So it's not super critical on how many times you spin it, but I would say you want to lock it as quickly as after you stop spinning it as possible.
Gotcha. All right, so we said something about a giveaway. We talked about Brian's books a little while ago.
Okay.
We have the entire collection. It's called the Media Bundle, as well as one of these super awesome Applied Ballistics t-shirts.
Yeah, we got them on.
Twinning. We're going to be giving that away on next week's show. The post went up about 5 minutes ago on the Shooter's Mindset Facebook page. You have to go over there, like us, like Applied Ballistics, and tag 2 friends in the post. And you will be entered to win. We'll have that drawing live next week on air.
I should have worn my Applied Ballistics shirt. I feel like such a loner. I have one. It's just, I don't know, somewhere else. It's somewhere in my house.
You want to go change real quick? We'll wait.
No, I got off work and anyways, wearing what I wore to work, but I feel like an outcast without my blue Applied Ballistics shirt on.
It's okay. You are.
Thanks.
We'll jump around a little bit on our order of questions. There was an acronym you guys said a lot about a custom drag model and the mobile lab and what happens at matches. So right when I first started, I saw this trailer and it said mobile laboratory or something someplace. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I should go check that out. And I never got around to it. So if I see you guys at a match, like for instance, I know the Wisconsin Barrel Makers Classic this weekend, what goes on there?
Yeah, so mostly what we're doing at matches right now is we try to get on the longest range that these places have available, and we set up our radar equipment, and then we let people come through and shoot. We measure the radar, so we use the radar to measure the drag on the bullet coming out of their rifle, and we process that data. And so just to kind of give an example of what someone would expect if they come visit us at one of these events, they shoot under the radar. Then as soon as they're done, I process the data, and you kind of come over to the trailer, or we might have a table set up depending on how things are laid out, and might take a minute or 30 seconds or whatever. But after I process the data, I create a printout that has your muzzle velocities for every shot. So typically we have people shoot 10 shots. It's got your muzzle velocities for 10 shots. It's got downrange velocities. It's got the G7 BC over the range that we're shooting. So, if we got a 800 yard range, or if we got a 1200 yard range, there'll be like a 0 to 800 yard or a 0 to 1200 yard G7 BC number on there. And then all of those are kind of totaled and analyzed at the bottom of the printout. And you've got your average velocity, your extreme spread, your SD. But then, so it gives you that for all of your muzzle velocities, for your downrange velocities. It gives you your average, extreme spread, and SD of your BC. So that's how we can kind of look at BC variation, which is another thing we've been spending a lot of time looking at lately. Because again, not so much in the inside 1,000-yard realm. I mean, it does have an effect, but not a huge effect. But in the ELR game, how consistent is your BC from shot to shot? Because, if it's not consistent, that can start opening up your group. So you get all of that information on the printout that we give you. And then it will also have a PDM code on there. And so kind of after, you walk away, we've really refined the process with which we're processing PDMs, but we will then typically that later that afternoon, that evening is where we're at now. We'll be able to upload your PDM and your G7 BC data into our library, so you can access that BC, but even better yet, that PDM from your Kestrel SIG, your phone app, all that good stuff. So that's kind of the process, or what you'd expect if you come to the mobile lab at one of these events right now. Now, to explain the CDM, PDM, all that good stuff. This is an explanation that Chris and I have done a couple times recently. It seems it can be long and convoluted, but we'll try to simplify it and keep it short. So what a BC is for people that may not be super familiar, or real high level on ballistic understanding, is a BC is really a kind of like a correction factor for a standard drag curve. And what a drag curve is your coefficient of drag versus Mach plot, so to speak. So for every projectile at every Mach number, which is your velocity, Mach is just the relation to the speed of sound, from 0 up to more or less infinity. We don't take it that far because obviously we're not shooting things with infinite velocity. There's a unique drag coefficient at every velocity, essentially. And so that turns into a curve, like you'd look at a graph. There's a standard curve for the G7 standard. It has a set CD values and it has a set shape for that plot.
I think I actually have those bullets. Just give me 1 second.
Oh, yeah, okay. But so what a BC is it's essentially scaling that curve up or down to try to closely match the bullet that you're actually shooting. And so the reason why a BC actually isn't ideal is because while you're scaling that curve to try to match the bullet that you're shooting, the shape of that curve is actually slightly different for the bullet that you're shooting versus the standard. And where that shape is different is where you get some very minor error in your solution. That's the reason why we've gone from G1 to G7, because the G1 shape was that's the G1 example he's holding out there. We've got big examples. The G1 shape is very different from the G7. So that's why the shape of that curve was really different, and why people had to run banded G1 BCs to get accurate predictions. We go to the G7 and it was a lot better. So we don't really necessarily have to run the banded BCs to get an accurate enough solution for what we're trying to do in a lot of cases. But especially now with people pushing the limits even further and shooting ELR, what we've done is we introduced the CDM, which is where instead of taking a standard curve, we just measure that curve for that specific bullet with the radar data. And so we get all of the exact CD values at all of the velocity numbers, obviously within our ability to shoot them and measure the velocity. And that's what a CDM is. So it's the best drag representation of that bullet. Now, where we go from CDM to PDM is, like I was talking about, with lot-to-lot variations, but also launch dynamics and rifle-specific, barrel-specific. Launch dynamics being effects the suppressor or muzzle brake might have, which do exist. That stuff can't get accounted for in a generic CDM that we have for a specific bullet. So once you kind of get to that level in the weeds, those very small, minute changes, when we shoot a PDM, we now have that drag curve, that drag coefficient versus Mach curve for your exact setup. So any weird launch dynamics you have with your suppressor, muzzle brake, barrel, if you have a rougher barrel that's actually lowering your BC a little bit, that is factored in. If you have a different lot of bullets, that's factored in. If you're pointing your bullets, that's factored in, obviously, because we're measuring exactly what you're shooting. So what you end up with a PDM is a drag curve that, within our ability to measure, is a perfect match for what you're shooting. So that, the drag should not even be a question in the error of your solution at that point.
That's awesome. So this sounds like an ungodly expensive service that probably only the richest of us can afford, right?
Nope. It is free.
It is what?
So it's if you come to a match that we're sponsoring with this service, it's free to the shooters to do. We offer that essentially as a sponsorship to the match. Obviously, the equipment to do it is very expensive. It takes a lot of time, and we've really refined our systems to make it efficient, and it's the best way for people to use our software. So, like I said, we offer this as a service that we sponsor to the matches. So, yeah, I mean, we're getting through 50, 60 guys in a day. We keep improving those numbers, but yeah. If you come see us at a match, it doesn't cost you anything to get that information or get that PDM measured, and we'll get it up on the library for guys to use.
Francis says that everyone should 100% expect to win the match when running a PDM. I believe he visited y'all on Friday, maybe, and then won the match.
Yep. So, yeah, Francis has been
enjoyed a lot of success with PDMs in the past. So I'm not surprised to hear that from him.
Yeah. I mean, and Francis, right there, Michigan guy too. So he's got a little bit more experience with us. But yeah, I mean, every match that we've been at, and he's been at, he comes and gets a PDM there, and obviously he's got the shooting skills to match up with it, so he's able to convert that into a win. But it definitely helps. Definitely helps.
And Jen says that it would be nice. It'd be really cool to have the mobile lab at the F-Class Nationals in October.
F-Class Nationals in October. Yeah, so that's a good point too, is if there's any like match directors listening, or just anyone, if anybody has a suggestion for events for us to come to at the mobile lab, get a hold of us at Applied Ballistics, either through the support email, or you can call into the office or email like Amanda at the office there. And yeah, we're always open to suggestions. I mean, obviously we have to consider scheduling with other stuff we've got going on, other events we're already going to, and it's got to be a good fit, but we're always open to suggestions for more events to bring the lab to and reach more shooters.
So what events that you know of for the rest of the year are you guys going to be at?
So we're going to the Barrel Maker Classic, obviously, coming up here this weekend. And then I believe the next one after that, what's that, Chris?
Ringneck, right? After that?
Yeah, so there's an ELR match in Kansas. It's at Ringneck Ranch, I believe. It's called ELR at Clark's Knob, something like that. That one is going to be August 20th-ish, whatever weekend is right there. I'm not 100% sure on what the exact dates are. I believe we're going to the Gap Grind. I think that's in October. Actually, I've got my calendar here.
First weekend of October.
So we're going to that.
I'm going to be the first one in line there.
Okay. We're supposed to be going to the King of 2 Miles. So that's got pushed back into September. So we should have it there at the King of 2 Miles doing PDMs there. Let me see if there's anything that we're committed to. Obviously, I mean, we had a bunch of stuff planned, and with all the changes that happened this year, COVID stuff, where things got shaken up, but that's all the stuff I know of for sure at the moment. Grind.
Amanda went ahead and in the comments she posts. Oh, that's not the right link. That didn't come up right. But on Applied Ballistics website, there is the full schedule if you're looking for something.
Yep.
And we didn't hit it there.
Yep, and we're trying to keep that updated. So obviously stuff's been changing dynamically with COVID, but as much as possible we'll keep that updated so guys can anyone can pay attention to that. The other one I'm pretty sure we're going to the Kestrel Fall Classic, but we'll have to see on that one.
Awesome. It sounds like you will. Do you know about the Precision Rifle Expo? Well,
so yeah, Chris, I think you're going to the Precision Rifle Expo, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I am. I'm not sure if the mobile lab's going there. Do you know if it's it'll be on site, Mitch? I know.
Yeah, I don't think we're taking the mobile lab there because the King of 2 Mile is kind of concurrent, and with the expo's better for us to have guys like Chris there to kind of put on some more
I'll be putting on
seminar-y type stuff, because people aren't bringing their own rifles there to shoot and do PDMs and stuff like that. The mobile lab's not as valuable there as just having personnel on site. So obviously, I mean, if it was the only thing happening at that time, we'd probably have it there. But with the King of 2 Miles being butted up next to it, we want to get those ELR shooters, PDMs, and all that good stuff. So I don't think we'll have the mobile lab at that event.
So somebody asked where to go about drag models for 22 long rifle. Francis already replied back. There's like 20 different new drag models in the bullet library. But like, let's say I bring my other green gun that shoots little 22s to one of the matches. Could we get a custom drag model for that?
Yeah. So right now we're trying to get people to kind of fill out the PDM form ahead of time before they come to the match, so we can get guys lined up and organized. But yeah, if guys want to bring a second rifle, or they want to bring a 22 or something, providing we can accommodate that with the range. So I guess that's something we would have to clarify with the venue. If there's nobody waiting in line to get their first PDM, we'll run people through on their second PDM or 22 PDM or anything like that. So we can definitely do that. Yeah, we do have some 22 stuff in the library, and it's something we're definitely going to do more of. It's just we got to roll it into the schedule. We got so much stuff going on that we want to do it. We just gotta make it fit.
Yeah, I feel you there. It's such a growing sport. The NRL 22 now, PRS announced their 22. So that would be really cool, especially with people trying to start doing this ELR 22 stuff.
Yeah, and I think as we get into that, I think there's a lot of stuff we'll learn that's different with 22s, with drag related stuff, twist rates, barrel effects. I think it'll be interesting. I think we'll learn a lot once we really dive into the 22 stuff more.
That'll be awesome. I look forward to that. I just love shooting rimfire. I shot one match and then all of a sudden ended up being a NRL 22 match director.
It's a good time.
Mm-hmm. So developing the bullet library, like, how does this process work? I know you said that at first we start off with bullets that we know are the real bullets that people are going to get. And obviously we shoot in front of some Doppler radar. But like, what's the full process before something gets added into that library?
So step one is either, like a new bullet gets announced, like, I don't know, a Nosler RDF or a Hornady A-tip or a new Berger Elite Hunter, whatever. And so when that bullet becomes available, typically if it's something like high level like that we know a lot of long range shooters are going to, they're going to want to shoot or try, that kind of immediately pops on our radar. And I personally have a running list that I keep track of for bullets that should be added to the library to kind of schedule and fit into our testing schedule. But also, if people have bullets that they're like, oh, this isn't in the library, it's just not something we've looked at or we've tested yet, feel free to, again, email us with suggestions. Regardless of where they go, they kind of filter their way to me. And if it's something that A, we have all the stuff we can easily test, or B is, looks like it'll bring a lot of value to, other people, it's something we overlooked, then it gets added to the list, kind of prioritized, and gets put in the queue wherever it needs to for future tests. So the key point there is, if anybody has a bullet they want added, shoot us an email, suggest it. We'll consider it and kind of prioritize it and see what we can do. From there, we order the bullets. So like I was saying earlier, we order all of the bullets we test from. Obviously, some like high-end ELR solid bullets are only available from the manufacturer, so we just buy them from them. But pretty much everything we get from Midway or Brownells or wherever. So we know we get bullets that shooters are also buying, and once they show up, they're kind of sitting there ready in the queue. Once we're kind of scheduled to do a test, we're ready to shoot a BC test. We'll go through and load up ammo for every caliber. We've got the cartridges and the loads that we use for our weight ranges. So it's a really efficient process. We're not doing load development with every bullet. And we load them all up, get them ready, and then we take them out and shoot them. When we shoot them, we're shooting at least groups of 10 for every bullet. So we're getting 10 really good data points on each bullet. And we're processing all that data. And then at that point, once it's all processed, we kind of we go through and organize it. And this is something we've really been streamlining to speed up the process. But we go through, organize it, putting it into the database formatted correctly. And then at that point, once it's organized into the database, we actually push an update. And that's literally the notification you get on your mobile app or on your Kestrel when there's an update. Once that's pushed, all those new profiles go into the library and they're ready to be used, particularly on the Kestrel and stuff like that. The mobile app, and I know on Apple, there's a little bit more work on our end involved because there's just differences in how all that stuff has to get added, but that's kind of the overview of what's happening to get a bullet from it's now available to the public to in our library.
Sweet. So y'all have that. I know it's so much information. It's like, oh, y'all have a applied ballistics training division. What services are offered and who are they available to?
Yeah, so Applied Ballistics Training Division, as Mitch was speaking about earlier, it was something that was initially launched to bridge the gap between what is the science that the AB is so good at and the science that we understand and the testing that goes along with that, and provide that link to the shooter, whether it be across the military, law enforcement, or civilian sports sector. And when I say provide that link, it's to relate the information, the science, and the software or device use back to the shooter so that the shooter can understand that information in such a way that he or she can process it and utilize it effectively and efficiently to actually achieve more hits on target. So, sometimes when we talk about, long-range external ballistics and, the science that goes into that, it's very easy to get caught up in it and get lost in it. And essentially, it's my job and other trainers' jobs to provide that understanding and that link for the shooter so that they understand how to best utilize their device, what a particular what a particular ramification would be of an input error, or best practices for trajectory prediction, understanding that, hey, I need to optimize my gyroscopic stability at the muzzle and there's various ways or various things we can do within that to achieve consistent flight, even through trans and sub. There's various things that, we will try and provide the link for, all the way from good, solid sound trajectory prediction and device use, all the way up to and including the, science of external ballistics. Now, ultimately, our job is to tie that back over to be a very usable source of information that can be executed easily by any shooter. We typically see ourselves working, when AB Training Division was first conceptualized, we found ourselves working in the military and law enforcement sector a lot for the first year or so. And that's continued on, but we've started branching out in the last year or so in the civilian sector as well. And now we currently even offer private training courses. And that's something that can be, accessed via the Applied Ballistics Training Division website. There's actually a training request, a link on there for private courses now as well. Alongside, typically it was the training requests from military law enforcement. Now, when I talk about those training requests, it gives the client or the shooter requesting that training the ability to customize the training that they're looking for as well. And so what I do is I take that training request and I optimize it and I modify it and I change it so that I'm not giving a shooter a generic program of instruction. I'm designing a program of instruction and a curriculum around learning objectives and training outcomes that will help facilitate the shooter meeting the goals that they're trying to achieve in their training as well. So yeah, that's basically what's entailed in all of that. And, you know, categorically, that training is available to anyone and everyone.
So how can people get information and upcoming training and classes? Like, where do they go to find all that?
Yeah, so as I was saying, a lot of the information is contained on the Applied Ballistics trainingdivision.com link. And also you'll see a lot of information blasted out across our Applied Ballistics social media platforms, you know, Instagram, Facebook, things like that. And we also host or co-host training with partnered training entities as well. As an example, I'm working with Heartland Precision Rifle in Nebraska in September. And that's something that we do, you know, periodically throughout the year. We'll partner with another training company and we'll provide instruction and, you know, curriculum modifications in conjunction with what that co-hosted training entity is looking to provide, and we'll supplement their training and hopefully provide the link to the best information, the most up-to-date information, and what's considered a cutting edge or the leading edge in the industry.
That's awesome. Do we have any more live? Oh, go ahead.
I would just, you know, I would just encourage shooters to go ahead and follow all of our social media platforms or our pages and get on the Applied Ballistics Training Division website. As you can imagine, with, you know, everything going on, or, you know, earlier in the year, our 2020 training schedule didn't really survive the first 6 months, but you know, unfortunately, we've had to cancel a few courses and that, and things have still been somewhat busy this year, but we're hoping to get things up and going again, you know, starting 2021. Not to say though, there are a few training courses that are still occurring later this year, like the partnered training course with Heartland Precision Rifle in September. There's also a ELR clinic at Spearpoint Ranch in September as well. And then, not to mention, I'll be running various clinics, such as the Precision Rifle Expo class that I'll be putting on there. So there's still a few things going on, despite the disruptions.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was about to ask you, Greg, do we have any more live?
I do not believe so. Let me double check. Nope, we are good on lives. Probably wrap this one down to shout outs.
All right. Go ahead with shout outs.
All right, I'll go first. First, I'd like to shout out to Gsl Suppressors. At some point in time soon, you're going to see one over here, and then also on the other pretty green rifle of mine. Right now, they're sitting at Crack Shop Pawn and Firearms, waiting on the ATF to decide that I deserve to preserve my hearing. Shooters and Sharpshooters of Augusta. They're almost every week since I don't have like my own ballistic laboratory. That's where I go for all of my low development. PDC Custom, if you are a fan of this beautiful rifle chassis, they are available in this color, also normal human colors as well. Rimfire, centerfire, pretty much anything you can think of, Craig over there makes. Shooter's World powder, I know I did some primer shopping over this weekend, or should I say looking at lots of pictures of boxes of primer that said sold out next to them. But I could still get powder, and I could get lots of powder. Just got another 8-pound jug of Shooter's World Precision yesterday. Hunter's HD Gold, pretty much the best thing you could ever put on your eyes while you're shooting. And Vortec, when you have a really nasty rifle, say like you may look like it was covered in moon dust or something after shooting a match or something, it'll clean it up real good. What's that face for, Jennifer?
That might have been my rifle and my gear that was covered in moon dust. Utah dust.
Utah dust. Utah moon. They're both real far away from me.
Yep. Mitch, do you have any shout outs?
Obviously, Applied Ballistics, like Chris kind of mentioned, you can check out. We're on Instagram, Applied Ballistics LLC. We're also on Facebook. Those are the two main social media platforms we hit up. We've also kind of been starting our own podcasts just to try to get some more ballistics specific information out there. We've got some episodes up. I believe they're on Podbean. So that's another thing guys can check out. Information on that's also on our social media. And then a lot of the information we touched on today ballistically can be found in the Applied Ballistics books, like the set you guys are giving away here next week. We've got lots of dealers for those books if people want to grab copies to read up and learn more and more detail, or they can get them through our store on our website at appliedballisticsllc.com.
Awesome. Chris, you got any shout outs?
I think Mitch has covered the bulk majority of it all, aside from what I said earlier. So no, I don't have anything to add.
Nothing to add. Nobody shouting out Mom.
Thanks, Mom.
She gets no love, right? All right, so I'll move to my shout outs. So Prime Ammunition, I'm gonna try and bring some to extra to see y'all next or this weekend coming up. I guess that's this weekend, like in a few days we'll be going there.
Yeah,
like 3 days, something like that. So
you're
yeah,
gonna plane soon.
I better pack. Anyway, so Prime Ammo for awesome ammo. Macmillan Stocks made my beautiful gun. It's not behind me because I have it packed already. That's the only thing that's packed. My rifle and my ammo are like packed in the case already and locked up, ready to go and weighed. They're 49.8 pounds. But anyway, that's all ready to go. So shout out to them. Gsl Suppressors, HD Gold, Vortec, Shooters of Augusta and Sharpshooters of Augusta, Warren scope mounts and bipods. I picked up another of their certificates off the prize table at the Wyoming match. Thanks for always supporting the matches. I know I'm going to forget somebody because I don't have my list. I'm trying to go back through everything. Yeah, I think that's probably about all. I got most everybody anyway. Oh, Night Force Optics. Got to remember the glass. Great glass. So with that being said, we can wind this down, I think. And I just want to thank y'all for spending an hour and a half of your time with us. Did you have something else, Greg?
Yeah, nobody shouted out Amanda, who did all the work to get the show all set up.
Oh yeah, and she's the one kind of coordinating and managing our podcast and everything too. Most people, if you reach out to AB, you'll probably end up talking to her. So yeah, big shout out to Amanda.
Man, y'all are in trouble for missing that one.
Mason wants a shout out. Mason's, I can't say his last name. Cisco?
Oh.
He said shout him out.
Now y'all are going to have people wanting shout outs. Like Prentice.
Oh, he's going to make like 80 comments?
He might. He might. But anyway, we do appreciate y'all coming on for an hour and a half and spending your Tuesday night with us and kind of dropping some knowledge. So everybody definitely check out the Applied Ballistics Lab. If you're in Wisconsin this weekend, go and see them. If you are at any of the other ones that they said, and Amanda put the schedule in the comments. So check them out, find out where they're going to be. It'll help you win 100% per Francis. Shooting ability has nothing to do with it. It is only having them do all of your numbers for you that will do it. So there you go. All right. So that's right. So that's gonna be a wrap for episode 304. See y'all next week.
See y'all.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.